So I think that's all of our announcements for today. So are you ready to get started with the first question, Clint?
I'm ready. Good morning, Tyler.
And good morning. So today, our first question is from Ted and Meg. They both asked, is there a device that I can use to determine if my sheet or blanket is truly grounded? And is there a way I can check whether my body is grounded?
Okay. Yes. We have what they call, a tester. And what this tester does is when you connect if you connect your product to the cube that you get with all your earthing products, but connect the tester on one side, connect the product on the other, then what you can do is turn the tester on. I'm backwards here, so it's a little awkward. So I turn it on, and if I put my finger or thumb, anything on the little metal on the back, and then if I touch something that is grounded, for instance, like this pillow here is grounded. Here's the cord, the white cord. So if I touch this pillow, you can see that whenever I touch it, it turns green. That means that your cord is working. It means that your pillow is working. And then if I go over here and I put my arm on top of it with the pillow cover on it, I can see that I'm grounded. Okay. So if you don't have one of these to test your product, the best way to test your product is if you have pain, your product's not working. If you go to bed and you discharge and you feel better, or your pain begins to subside and so on, that means you're grounded. But anyhow, these are available. I'm not sure what they run. There's an earlier version, but they're all similar to this. And the other thing too that everybody has to for sure do, these are designed so that you can test the cord. You put the cord in once and connect it, and if the green light comes on, that means your cord is working. So it's important to check your cords and so on. Okay, did I answer it?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool.
And I think they are available on www.earthing.com for $36.99.
Okay, that's cord and everything, right? Yeah.
Right. And then a moment here. Okay. And then, okay, let's move on to the next question. The second question is from Juliana. She asked if this continuity tester needs to be plugged in. Yes,
you have to, because what the continuity tester means, you're measuring the electrical circuit. In this case, you connect to the electrical ground, which is connected to the earth, and then you connect your product on the other side. So what you're measuring is that there is a circuit, an open circuit, so that, not an open circuit, but a completed circuit, so that earth can travel on the wire and equalize your body with the earth. Did I explain? Make sure I explain these properly, because I get lost in my head sometimes.
Yeah, no, I think that answers it. I think being able to see that green light really gives people the confirmation that the product is.
Yeah. Before we leave that, I can, I need to discuss one thing too. People who have them can use voltmeters to measure conductivity and continuity. But the problem that most people have with them, they're trying to use voltage, and they're trying to measure EMF and things like that. But one thing that they all miss and do not understand, the human body is not a copper wire, nor are any of the ground planes. I mean, they are conductive. But what I wanted to point out was that I guess I can do it with a voltmeter easier so that people can see it. And this is an important factor that for the guys who have these voltmeters and are out there screaming all the time about conductivity. But what you have to do is you have to measure ohms of resistance. And I think we may have discussed that once before, but resistance means like, it's if you go outdoors, like with the fire, I mean, the water hose, you turn it on full blast, there's no resistance. But if you start turning the faucet down, then you're creating resistance. So if you're trying to fill a bucket with water, it's going to take a little longer if you put resistance on it than if you just put the hose in the bucket and fill it up fast. But the point is the bucket's going to fill up no matter what. And in this case, but anyhow, so if you can see the meter here, I don't know, I'll turn the light on. You can see the meter here. If I put my finger on one probe and my finger on the other probe, you can see that I have some 2.5 mega ohms of resistance. So that's like 2.5 million ohms of resistance. Where if I'm testing a copper wire, there will be 0 ohms of resistance. But anyhow, so the point is you can measure using a voltmeter, but you have to put it on resistance, I mean on ohms, and then you have to assume that if it's anything, you know, if you get any reading at all, electrons are traveling, they're just traveling at a slower rate than they would be if you were a copper wire. But anyhow, so it's really challenging to explain this sometimes, especially with my hands and poor lighting, but soon I'll get somebody to help me to control the camera, and we'll go and do these so that people really truly understand what they're trying to do when they're grounding. And it isn't, you're not trying to light light bulbs, because it's not going to happen. There's built-in resistance, there's normal resistance, but most of all, your skin resistance on the surface of your skin, I can show you here with a simple meter that, you know, does nothing except test resistance. So here it's in the middle, that's about, you know, 8, so that's about you know, 5-6 mega ohms of resistance, million ohms of resistance. Where if I go down and touch other parts of the body, it will be a little lower. The fingers are going to be well, sometimes there's some people's skin is so dry it's really hard to measure. But if I put this on a conductive product like the pillow, so it comes down to, you know, but everything. Okay, there we go. Anyhow, it goes all the way down to the green where it's conductive. So the pillowcase is conductive, but my skin is not conductive. The earth itself is not 100% conductive. I mean, because there's resistance between this, you know, in the soil and so on. So this is not, there's a big misunderstanding with a lot of folks about using voltmeters and electrical wiring and copper and conductivity versus dissipative and equalization, charge equalization. But anyhow, I don't know if that makes any sense, but we are going to sometime in the future go into that in a little more detail and give you exact demonstrations so that people can understand it a little bit better. The main thing is if you're grounded, your pain's going to go away. But if you're not grounded, your pain's going to come back.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question. This was received from Margareta, Sandra, and also Letty. And they asked, how long do the sheets last? How often should we be checking our products with the tester?
Okay, if you're using the new carbon black sheets and mats, we've been using them for over 5 years in our chairs and various other applications, our uni mats and everything. And they're conductive. They last pretty much, it seems to, so far we can say at least 5-6 years. So those your primary thing that you want to test is like I showed you earlier, you want to test your cords as much as possible. You can do that with the voltmeter, continuity meter. Again, you have to use resistance. There's no conductivity. But anyhow, so the main thing is to always test your cord, because if your cord's not working, then your product's not going to work. But it's more likely a cord to get chewed on by a pet, or to break it because of the constant use of it. But the material itself, the black material, it pretty much lasts forever. The silver products that we we tried to pioneer, we tried to develop for over many years. Those you have to test almost weekly, because they will, if you lay on them with bare skin and you sweat a lot, or perspire, not sweat, which we all do, especially the guys on their side of the bed, you can see where the conductivity disappears quite quickly. On the women, it's a little bit, takes a lot longer, and I think it's because of the nightwear. But anyhow, so if you're using silver, you need to check them constantly, especially after you wash them. Put them back on. Every time you wash them, put them back on the bed, which should be at least weekly. Then you should measure them. And the silver pillowcases, you have to measure them, I mean, for sure weekly, because they only last for a few weeks. But the new carbon, that's why we went to the carbon. That's why we spent so many years developing this product, was because nobody wants to be forever having to check what they're doing and whatever. They want to be able to just get in bed and go to sleep and feel better. And so many people were disappointed with the silver, and we were disappointed with it, but we did the best we could over the years. And but again, we are a research and development company. That's what we research the science of grounding and the effects of it. And we spent as many years researching how do you ground a person in bed and have it be have it work without question, and have it be affordable for the average person, because conductive products in the medical world, or the ESD, or clean rooms, or mission critical centers and stuff, this stuff's very, very expensive. You would not be able to afford it. So what we've done is tried to produce affordable and effective, cost-effective products that, without question, they're safe and they work.
Right. Yeah, I think you just actually answered our next question. Sharon was asking why we no longer offer the silver plush pad. So I think that was definitely answered there. Do you have anything to add on that?
Well, I do. We started out with the silver sheets, and we ran those at 5% silver, and technically they work great for a period of time. But the silver they're all, anything like that it's a monofilament nylon fiber, and then you electroplate silver to it. So the silver on it is very thin. And so if there's any oxygen, it's like, if you remember when you were a kid, you go in and touch your grandma's silver, and the next morning you come back and you can see the fingerprint on it. So your body oil gets on silver, it oxidizes it, tarnishes it, oxidizes it. And then because it's so thin, it cracks, and then it loses its conductivity. Even though it looks like it's still there, it loses a lot of its conductivity. So anyhow, we started out with 5% silver, and the last series that we ran anywhere from 10 to 20% silver. And then the silver plush pads, they were like 50% silver. And we thought, well, let's just keep throwing more silver at, more silver at. But again, even no matter what you do, no matter how much silver you put in a short period of time, those products do lose their conductivity. So when you first get them, they work 100%, I guarantee it. But as time goes on, depending on how you wash them, depending on how you perspire your nightwear and your skin contact with them, that will determine the life expectancy.
Okay, perfect. This next question is a very popular question, and we received it in our pre-submitted questions, and I'm also seeing it pop up in the live Q&A right now. And basically the question is, do we need to make direct skin contact with the products? If not, how does this work? We received this from Leslie, Juan, Iran, Maurice, Jewel, Reina, Alice, Vita, and Thomas, and a few, again, like I said, in the live Q&A. And so basically, if you could explain that, and then talking about, using clothes, what kind of sheets, do bamboo sheets or 100% cotton sheets work the best, kind of that whole topic.
Okay, very good. That's a tough question. We've been fighting that question for 20 years. In what in doing our research and stuff, we've always used, electrode patches that you can take and put on the palm of the hand or the bottom of the feet. And we would, we needed this because we need to have control over the environment. If people are on the sheet, they're moving around, whatever, so you don't, so that you don't have consistent control for monitoring with equipment and so on. But anyhow, so over the years in doing our testing, we could take people like someone who has, let's say, MS. And this isn't an MS picture, but it illustrates the same concept. So if I put a patch on my hand like so, and I have cold fingers and cold toes and pain in my extremities, within 30 minutes, the circulation is going to improve, the pain's going to go away. And so I can tell you that if you have a fire in your body, like for instance, as soon as you put the patch on, if you had MS like this for whatever period of time, or whatever the health disorder that has these, then as soon as you ground, this stops, this goes away. Your immune system is no longer fighting itself and creating inflammation. Instead, the fire's been put out. You have enough redox potential in your body. So then the body can go back to normal. So this is the principle of earthing. And this occurs naturally when you're standing barefoot on the earth. And it's like I've said last time, the animals that live in the wild, they're naturally grounded all the time. They have none of these modern health inflammation-related health disorders. Yet all of the animals who live indoors with their owners, they all visit the vet constantly, and they have this eventually manifest the same health disorders, same inflammation-related health disorders as their owners, and especially cancer. But anyhow, so this is, if you have a fire, if you have a serious autoimmune disease and you want to put the fire out, you want to stop the oxidation, you want to stop the inflammation, then this is like putting a fire hose on a fire. It's going to put it out. Now, once you have normalized, put the fire out in your body, and some people who are older sleep with these patches, they live with them because it just brings, they get their life back. Other people can do this just one time for 20, 30 minutes, and they have a 30-year-old injury or chronic pain go away and it never comes back. So everything is kind of subjective and everybody's a little bit different. But anyhow, so the issue here is you have direct skin contact, and it's like standing, I weigh 175 pounds. If I go outdoors, stand barefoot, there's 175 pounds of pressure contacting my bare feet to the earth. So it's kind of like this. Okay, so now we get into sheets and all of these devices. The Unimats, we've sold millions of those things, and the reason was because they were inexpensive, and in the early days when we were selling them and the cotton sheets, everybody would always say, well, they work better because they would put the little Unimat in the bed and sleep directly on it. And so it was a solid surface, so you're going to perspire. And I mean, they would put it under the sheet and sleep on it, or some people would sleep directly on it. So, but to answer the question, so if you had MS, is it going to work as good just to sleep on a Unimat? Yes, over a period of time. But if you want to stop the inflammation now, in the next 30 minutes, and then you want to give your body time enough to heal and recover from the damage, then put the patch on and keep it on and stay grounded until it heals, until you recover. And if you take the patch off or you get ungrounded and your pain starts coming up, that's time to stop and go back and get grounded, because you have a fire going on in your body if you have pain in your body. So anyhow, but to go back to the pillow, or this could be a sleep mat or anything. You can sleep on it if you want. I mean, it's not going to, a lot of people do because they have severe arthritis and severe inflammation-related health disorders. But if you're laying on the pillow, which is covering the mat, then what's going to happen is your body's going to perspire. There's enough humidity. It's like, it's like here, if I just grab the pillow with my hand, you can see the, I don't know if I'm doing this right. You can see the light turn green. So what's happening here is there's enough humidity in the air, and I'm in California where we're in a desert area, but still there's enough humidity in the area that there's moisture in this cotton fabric. And then as soon as I lay on something, my skin is perspiring. And so there's, especially when you're under a cover, then you're going to create a vapor barrier that is conductive. It's like when you sit in a car and you drive down and you get out and your shirt is all wet and damp. It's the same thing. I mean, but anyhow, so you have conductivity. The electrons, it's not an either no flow, contact or conductive or not conductive. That is not the situation. There's always, electrons will always travel. They just will travel slower or faster. The difference between, for instance, a mega ohm or 2 mega ohms of resistance is it's going to take, like the bucket, it's going to take longer to fill it up. But your body, when you connect it to the earth, it may take a few nanoseconds, to equalize with the earth rather than instantly, but you are still going to be grounded. Your body is still going to become negatively charged. You're going to equalize with the earth and be at earth potential, be negatively charged, which reduces and prevents inflammation. I'm sorry that I keep going in a circle here, but
no, I think we got to the answer there. And so I think, to clarify,
but you don't have to have skin contact. You just have to be laying. This is a huge ground plane. If you lay on it, your body is going to perspire. There's enough humidity in the air that it'll saturate any kind of cotton. Now, if you get on polyester and some of those things, you won't have near, because the cotton will hold moisture. It will hold humidity. It will hold body perspiration. Polyester is not. Bamboo is a rayon. So I don't know too much.
Right. Okay, so yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And I think, a lot of the questions are what materials work. So basically it's natural fibers such as cotton or bamboo, and just stay away from non-organic or non-natural materials.
Well, it's like you can have a cotton sheet and it will last X number of years. You can have a 50-50 poly cotton sheet and it may last 10 years. Well, that 50-50 poly cotton sheet is going to work just as well, pretty much as a cotton sheet. If it's 100% microfiber polyester sheet, then those are the ones that are a little more problematic for conductivity. But as long as you're laying on it and laying on the mat, still between the fibers, between everything else, there's going to be a moisture barrier, and it's going to be conductive. But I'm just telling you, cotton's better than polyester. But don't throw your polyester sheets out, because they will still work.
Okay, perfect. No, I think that adequately answers the questions. I know a lot of people were asking about, wearing pajamas and socks. And I think ultimately, the bottom line is that you want to make as direct skin contact as possible.
Yes, but
as close to.
But I want to share another thing is like this meter we did here this morning. Your hands and the bottom of your feet are the most conductive part of your body. Okay. But you have resistance all over your body. Like your skin resistance is going to be anywhere near 5 million ohms of resistance, because the body is not a copper wire. So the most conductive parts of your body are your hands and your feet. So don't put gloves and socks on when you go to sleep. That's the main advice I would give. Other than that, there's the other thing that's going on with grounding, and we don't get to talk about it enough. And everybody is way ahead of us, and everybody's an expert out there. But basically, when you put a mat or a pillow in your bed and connect it to the earth has resonating, to me they're electric fields, but frequencies, where the Earth is it's breathing, it's frequent. I mean, there are frequencies that are increasing in amplitude depending on time of day and how far you are from 2 o'clock at the equator. And so there's, when you lay on this, there's this field, this Earth field the pad is now part of the Earth. So you have this resonant frequency, and it's moving back and forth. And when you lay on it, rather than vibrating at 60 hertz, when you're not grounded, you lay down on the mat, and now your body automatically close couples with the Earth's electric field, and it calms the sympathetic nervous system, quiets everything. Parasympathetic comes back. You release the tension, you can breathe, your circulation improves, and so on and so on. So it's more than just electrons, it's more than just the inflammation. It's part of it is just calming the sympathetic nervous system.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's great. We'll go through a couple more questions, and then we'll start taking some live questions as well.
Okay.
So Rena had written in saying, I am interested in buying a universal mat, but I live in the Philippines and our voltage outlet is 220 volts versus 120 volts in the US.
Right.
Will your products work with a 220 volt outlet?
Yes, the voltage is irrelevant. What's relevant is that you are connected to the ground system. The ground system is independent of the electrical system, and it's the electrical safety for your home. And so it doesn't matter what the voltage is. I mean, we have a built-in resistor that is, it works either way.
Perfect. And there's also adapters on the website for different countries as well.
Okay.
The next question is from Julia. Julia's question is, does grounding have a good effect, or I'm sorry, if grounding has a good effect on blood flow, could it be risky for people on blood thinners?
We have articles at the Earthing Institute that address that, especially Coumadin. And see, people today, I'll put up this little picture. It's in the book, it's in our movies. Over here, this is we were doing a little research in Connecticut with I think we had 12, 13 medical doctors who were there that day. And so what they did is they drew blood on every person there. And these were healthy people. You know, these were a lot of these were health practitioners. But we drew their blood, and every one of them had what you would call a rouleau formation. So thick, sticky blood. And then after we grounded them for a while, 30 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes, then they redrew the blood, and they saw everybody's blood normalized, meaning that we did a study after this to understand why this happened. And so basically what we found was that as soon as you ground the body to the earth has let's say it's 20 millivolts negative. On the average, your red blood cells now, they increase their negative surface charge, and they become more negative and kind of get grounded. They're kind of equalized with the earth. So now when because they're round and because they're electrically charged, negatively charged, they can't stick together. It's impossible for them to stick together when they're at a certain negative surface charge. So now what happens is almost everybody in America today, half the people are on some kind of a blood thinner, some kind of a something, because they have thick, sticky blood. In nature, the animals in the wild, they don't have thick, sticky blood. But this is all because we lost our natural ground. So everybody has some level of thick, sticky blood. It's related to inflammation, and it's related to other things which we can discuss later. But the point is, if your blood is very thick and sticky, then especially when you're older, they will put people on Coumadin or various other health disorder. I mean, various other types of warfarin and so on. But anyhow, so if you get grounded and your blood returns to normal, The problem is if you're going to get grounded and stay grounded, then you don't have a problem. But if you're going to ground for a few hours and then you're not going to ground, then you're still going to have these issues. So people who are on these blood thinners, you can't just go off of blood thinners. You have to make a life decision. It's like you can't eat spinach when you are on blood thinners. You can't eat healthy greens when you are on blood thinners because they naturally tend to normalize blood viscosity. So, so this is you have to learn about these things and you have to make lifestyle decisions. But I'm not going to advocate that anybody make any changes without their doctor knowing about it if they are on warfarin or any of these blood thinners. But the point is, in nature, I mean, when you ground people, if they're on the blood thinners and that normalizes the blood, then the warfarin or Coumadin the blood will become thinner. Then if they bump into something, they'll have bruises real easy, or you can just touch the skin. Sometimes you'll have bruises and so on. So anytime, and people who are on these blood thinners, their doctors usually monitor their ion every couple of weeks or monthly, so they can manage it. But people also know that if they start bleeding, then they know that their blood thinner is too thin. So this is an artificial management of managing blood viscosity and so on. But anyhow, it's a very serious thing. So it's not something you have to do it consciously. You have to understand, do your homework, do your research. But if you're going to be grounded, if you're on heavy Coumadin, experiment with it, ground for a few hours at a time. Your body will adapt to it. If the doctor sees that your INR is improving, then he will start lowering the Coumadin and so on. So, but anyhow, it's a very, it's an absurd thing actually, because this is what we've done to ourselves. I'll just show this real quick. This is the rise of rubber sole shoes. This is the rise of diabetes and all of these modern health disorders. It's because we wear shoes. We've lost our electrical ground, and now our bodies are just struggling. But go on. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you're fine. So we're going to do a couple of the live questions. So Murray asked, in your last webcast, you mentioned drinking tequila on the beach years ago with no resulting hangover. How do you explain conductivity on dry sand?
Well, sand isn't dry. Sand holds moisture. And if you lay on the beach, I mean, all you got to do is scrape back like a half inch, and you'll see there's moisture underneath the sand. You'd have to be in the Sahara, maybe. But even there is moisture just a half inch or an inch down. Sand is very conductive. In fact, I went out to, in the early days, I remember I went out to the Borrego Desert here out east of San Diego, and I wanted to measure the effects of what you're talking about, sand. And I was in an RV, and so I took a ground rod and I stuck it in the earth, and I did a measurement and everything, and so I knew that I was grounded. And then I was there for like 7 nights camping and everything. And so every other night I would start, the first few nights, I would disconnect the ground and sleep, because I shouldn't have needed to be grounded in the desert, because there's no EMF, there's no anything. And I was out camping or playing around all day, and half the time barefoot when it wasn't too hot. But anyhow, I found was that even in the sand, if I disconnect that ground rod, and you got to remember my age, I'm an old timer, but even at my age, the pains would start to come back after a night or two. Put the ground rod back in the sand, and the pain would go away. Okay, so Earth's surface charge is universal, and it's quite similar everywhere on the planet. It's more conductive depending on the amount of moisture, but still it's there. There may be a little more resistance, but the pain may go away a few nanoseconds slower than if I were on green grass. But so sand holds moisture. Rocks hold moisture. Anything that holds moisture is going to be a conductor or semiconductor.
All right. So I think you kind of answered this next question from Vicky, but to that point, she was asking, is the grounding from the products any different in intensity than grounding outside on earth or grass?
Well, if you're standing barefoot on the earth or sitting on the earth with your bare feet and your hands on the earth, on grass, and you know that's going to be what you would experience. That's nature. That's who we are. That's where we came from. We were always naturally grounded. If you go indoors, what we're trying to do indoors is to replicate that experience. And so by putting a conductive rod in the ground or conductive wire to the outlet, and then you plug conductive wire into it into this, for instance, these carbon black mats are every bit as conductive as the earth is. So at the point that you connect all that together, then you have replicated you replicated two things. One, electrons can migrate to the body, but if you sit with your bare feet and your bare hands on that pad, I guarantee it's going to be similar to being outdoors. So are your experiences different? Yes. When you are outdoors, you're getting sunshine, your body is functioning more normal, you're getting fresh air, so there's a lot of other things. And then a lot of people don't notice the sensation of the body equalizing with the earth when you're on grass, because you have all those other sensations like the grass itself or the rocks or whatever's in your environment. But anyhow, is it the same? It's designed technically to be the same. Now, the level of the working functioning or the functioning of your product can change over time depending on what type of grounding product you're using. But the black that we've tried to engineer that we're bringing on now is, we have tested this for 5 years with the chairs, the Unimats, the bed mats and so on, and now the pillow coming out. They should do it. Now there's other issues involved, but basically, technically, yeah, your body is going to resonate with the earth and you're going to absorb electrons from the earth. Are there other issues? Yes, there are.
Okay. All right, we'll hop into the next question from Meg. Since sleeping on a grounding sheet, I don't wake up super refreshed. In fact, I have trouble getting out of bed, maybe because I need more sleep in general, but I have noticed that I've been having crazy vivid dreams. Anyone else experience that? Any theories as to why that happens?
Yeah, both of those. So again, ladies who have who report this, by and large, on the average, they're 35 years old or older. They just started grounding. Their health is compromised. They're suffering from adrenal fatigue and exhaustion and raising kids and family and work and all these things. So when they start getting grounded, then all of a sudden they start going into a deeper sleep. And when you go into it, when you have vivid dreams, that means you're going into your different sleep stages more properly. And during these sleep stages, there's a lot of hormone cascades. There's a lot of things happening in the body. But the main thing is, you have, from living ungrounded for years and all the stressful life that we all have today, you create a lot of oxidative damage, oxidative damage. And so when you start grounding the body, then the electrons are absorbed, and then they start slowly, first of all, they put the fire out. And then the immune system can go back to work on recovery and restoring the body to health, returning the body to normal. So sometimes when you start sleeping grounded, you don't want to get out of bed for 3 or 4 days because you're exhausted, and now you put the fire out and you're not in this sympathetic state, and so the body can start healing. But if you are tired and fatigued when you get up in the morning, you're not rested. You haven't recovered yet. You need more sleep. You need more rest, or you need to manage your activities such that you can day to day get more rest.
Perfect.
I don't know if I answered that for sure, but
No.
Vivid dreams is one of the most common things that we hear. And talking to the sleep analyst and people like that is saying you're restoring their natural sleep stages and cycles.
Okay. The next question is another live question. It is there any reason, illness, or disease that grounding would make worse or even hurt? For example, is there too much of a good thing for that particular ailment?
Well, if you're talking about Lyme's disease, or Lyme's, or if you're talking about, again, what I try to, I'll use this chart again. Basically, if you're not grounded, your blood is thick and sticky. I don't care who you are. If you're wearing shoes, living in a house, walking on carpets, walking on insulated foam, and sleeping on a foam bed full of static electricity, then you are definitely going to have thick, sticky blood. There's no question about it. And we know this because we measure healthy doctors. And on the other hand, so now, as soon as you get grounded, and it doesn't matter who you are, we've seen this many, many times. As soon as you get grounded, then the red blood cells become more negatively charged. Now they repel each other. They cannot stick together. So now the first thing that happens is now the blood, and we have this in the beauty study, the facial study was where this was the most pronounced. But now the blood can get into the capillaries and into these. First of all, you're putting out the fire that's causing the sympathetic stress, and that's what a lot of this is related to. But for instance, in the fingers and the toes, neuropathy or Lyme's or various issues like that, what happens is you've had poor circulation, and the spirochetes and bacteria build up in the ends, in the capillaries, or in the end of the nerves and so on. And so as soon as you normalize blood viscosity, then the blood is thin. Now it can get in and out of the capillaries, so it's going to go in there, oxygenate the tissue, and it's going to kill off a lot of the spirochetes or the oxygenation and everything. So it's going to kill off a lot of the bacteria. And then it's going to be like your immune system, like you had the flu. Because now all of this bacteria that was hiding in your capillaries and so on is being killed. And so it's going to die off. So you're going to feel like you have the flu sometimes. Now, some people call this detox. Some people call it whatever. But it is, yeah, so yes, you are. Some people who have serious, their health is very compromised, they have to go a little slow because it's so different. It's so, it's like the flu. You just don't want it, but you have to go through this. And so some people, go slow, do whatever. Some people man up and go through it. But you can't have too much grounding in nature. All of the animals who live in nature, they're grounded 100%. They don't have inflammation-related health disorders. They do not experience them. They have an immune system that oxidizes pathogens and those kind of things, but they don't start the body on fire so anyhow, am I answering the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I think that the question's been sufficiently answered, and I think we can move on to the next one.
Yes.
This one is also a live question from David. What is your favorite clinical study regarding earthing?
I think the study they did with the babies at the Hershey Clinic in Pennsylvania, that one was important because what it showed was that these preemies were, they were in a chronically elevated sympathetic state or a fight and flight state. And so they have all of the colics and all of the stress-related health disorders. And it's very challenging for the docs to deal with that. So as soon as they ground them for 30 seconds, then their vagal tone, meaning the sympathetic, parasympathetic, begin to normalize. Their heart rate variability increases significantly, and they calm down and they turn into normal babies. Now, the thing that's interesting about that, there's no placebo effect there whatsoever. But we've seen it for years and years on adults, but they just can't comprehend it because, well, where's the science, whatever, everything is so subjective. when you're doing studies, or especially dealing with pain, and because the pain is coming from emotions, or it's coming from injuries, or it's coming from oxidation and so on. But anyhow, that study is probably one of the most significant, because it really makes a loud statement. But I think without question, the most important study that we've done is the blood viscosity study. This is, everybody should try to understand this, but the cause of inflammation is thick, sticky blood, poor oxygenation of the tissue. Well, so it's all about the blood. So if you can normalize your blood viscosity just by standing barefoot on the earth, that's without question. This is the discovery of earthing. This is thanks to Gaetan Chevalier, Dr. Stephen Sinatra, and a few others that helped pull this study together over the years. And this is absolutely phenomenal. This is what grounding is all about. Get the inflammation out of your body, return the body to normal. If you do that, then the immune system, it'll restore your health. The body is a self-healing mechanism. If your blood is thick and sticky, it can't do what it's designed to do, or the work the way it's supposed to do. Your immune system is compromised because it's forever trying to clean up the damage that's being created by this, rather than maintaining the body in its most natural, healthy state. Health is natural. Health is your most natural state. If you have poor health, if you have pain, if you have compromised health, it's right here. It's really, really simple. It's not this lotion, potion, whatever. It's your immune system. Okay, sorry. I get a little radical sometimes.
No. All right. Our next question is from Luz. She said, I read in the book that it is better to avoid earthing 1 hour after eating. So can I actually do earthing while eating, or is it better to avoid both?
That's maybe 7th or 8th most absurd thing I've ever heard. I have no idea where, we deal in reality. And to validate anything, I was taught when I was very young, because I grew up, around animals and livestock. And if, the animals get sick, then the first thing you look at is what is going on? What have they been eating? What's going on? Because they're supposed to be healthy. The only reason they're unhealthy is because they're, something's interfering, in the pasture, the water, or whatever. So if you want to know the truth about anything to do with anything, go sit on a rock in the pasture or in the woods and watch the animals and see what they do what they do. And if you don't see something in nature, you maybe kind of want to avoid it, because health is not something that we're not smarter than the body. We're not smarter than nature. We're not smarter than millions of years of, that got us here, and our immune system. We need to remove from our body those things that are stressing our immune system, because if you do that, then your body only knows to do one thing: return to health.
Okay, perfect. Next question is, why is it that I feel the benefit of earthing with my mattress cover and pillow cover some nights more than others?
Well, it could be, this is one of those questions that's kind of interesting. It's like, and we talked about it last time about a lot of the people who have MS, lupus, and fibromyalgia and things like that. And like I said, grounding will put the fire out. Grounding will normalize your blood viscosity, and you'll remove the pain and all that stuff. So you have to ask yourself, what is feeding this inflammation? Sometimes it's an injury. Sometimes it's over-exercising. Sometimes it's 100 different things. But most of the time, what's feeding the body, producing the fight or flight responses, or the cortisol, the elevated cortisol, which throws off the pH instantly and so on, is what's going on up here. If, it's like the mind, what the mind believes is real inside. It's like if people are full of anger or upset or stress because of situations that are going on at work, in their life, with their children, with money, finance, all of these things. So when you get in bed at night, if you don't turn these things off, if you don't take a tablet, write them down, put them on your nightstand so that your mind doesn't have to think about it. But you're sitting there, you're some nights you're in more of a fight or flight state. You're more stressed and your body is producing cortisol and it's interfering. So um, it's like the cortisol study we did on the pilots or the stewardesses. Their cortisol was 3 hours off. And what we learned from that is that jet lag, that feeling of having acid in your veins, or that horrible feeling of jet lag. What that is your body's producing cortisol on a different level. It's also your body gets full of, and so you can't sleep. I mean, so I don't know if I explained that properly, but basically it's the bear in the woods, it's the fight or the flight, it's what's going on in your mind. So you need to find ways to reduce any coyotes, whatever you want to call it, the bear in the woods. You need to write these things down, get them, and because your mind's trying to deal with it and solve the problem, it can't. You need to sleep. So put it on a pad, put it beside your bed in the morning, you wake up, and then you can start thinking about it again. But as long as the mind knows that it's on a pad and it's there and it doesn't have to deal with it, then it'll go to sleep.
Okay. All right, so we're going to do a couple more of the pre-submitted questions, then we'll get back to the live ones at the end.
Okay.
So let's see here. Alice asked, are there any efforts being made to interest politicians in the benefits of earthing, in particular those interested in education and children's health and elder care, etc.? She also said, with all of the focus on health issues and in keeping the public safe, it would seem an appropriate time to emphasize those benefits.
Okay. We have grounded heads of states in various countries. We have grounded hundreds and hundreds of doctors, scientists, biologists. We have grounded so many people. We have literally, I can swear, we've given away at least $1 million worth of product over the years to people that we felt needed to be aware of this because they had influence over other people's health or whatever. And the same with the athletes. But I'm going to tell you a little story that one time I still do, a doctor down the road first started buying our sleep products, recovery bags but he would order them routinely, and I didn't know what he was doing with them. So one day I was driving, he wanted half a dozen. So I said, I'm driving by there in the next couple of days. I just want to drop them off. And he said, fine. So I went in, met him, nice guy. And he took the products, paid me and everything. And I said, what do you do with these? And he says, well, the staff, meaning the other doctors, we use them to stay off of our hypertension meds because doctors' lives are very stressful. And I said, well, why don't you give them to your patients who need them? Because you're treating people with hypertension and so on. And he says, look at that door. And I looked over at the door and he says, every time somebody walks through that door, they're worth $10,000 to us just in running tests and they came in, and if I don't put them on script, they're going to go to some other doctor. So I have to put them on something. And he said, you have to know that I'm married to a doctor's wife. I mean, my wife is married to a doctor, something like that. And I went to school for 12 years. And I was trained in everything I know to do. And I'm an expert at what I do. And there are rules and regulations that we follow and we have to follow. But he says, most important, he says, and I've got all this staff, I got all this overhead, I've got this building, we have to pay the utilities, I have a big house payment, I have carpeting. I have to make money. I can't tell people to go home, take their shoes off, and get well for free. Now, that's not a statement against the doctors. I have all the admiration in the world for doctors. I wouldn't even be sitting here if I hadn't had great surgeons and great docs and great chiropractors along the way. But the point is, we have created a state, a culture, a system where medical is about money and it's about earning more profit. It's like I talk to insurance companies occasionally, and I said, here's something that can lower your insurance costs. They said, are not in the business of lowering an insurance cost. We need our insurance costs to go up every so many months or annually so that our shareholders can have improved profits. If we start lowering insurance premiums, then we're going to make less money, and then we're not going to be able to satisfy our shareholders. So, but you have to put everything in perspective. So doctors are gold-plated, a lot of them. A lot of them are not, and it's just like anything else. But the point is, today you shouldn't be thinking health insurance, like I pay for all this insurance, and if I get sick, I can go to the doc. What you have to do is you have to change your thinking today. You have to think health assurance. What can I do to assure that I remain healthy? Because they can't fix you. The only thing that can fix you is your immune system. They can do surgery. They can do lots of things. They can give you antibiotics. They can do many things. But it's just like all the issues that are going on today. The people who have the problems are the ones who have poor health. So unfortunately, you can't fix people overnight that have poor health. It took years to mess up your health, screw up your health. It's going to take a little while to clean it up. But the main thing is you have to stop and think, what's interfering with my health? How come I don't have health? It's something you're thinking, something you're eating, and we know that, oxygen, water, but most of all, we know that the body is 100% electrical. Everything in the body is electrical first, chemical second. So if you don't have electrical stability, you have a major problem, because that's messing up your immune system. Your immune system functions electrically. So again, I'm overstating. I don't even remember the questions half the time, but the point is, ask me the question. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's okay. No, Alice was just asking about the efforts that we've made to interest politicians or anyone that's involved in education and
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, but anyhow, that's what we've been doing. And we've worked with the school systems. We've worked with various types of health organizations, spas, wellness centers. We've worked with everybody. But but there's a system out there that's not going to change overnight. The only thing that's going to change is young people. Old people are going to keep doing what they do. They're going to do what they know. But young people, they're starting to change. They're starting to eat better. They're starting to exercise. They're starting to do things that are normal. I didn't have to do any of the exercise when I was a kid, because I got up in the morning, I hit the decks running, milk cows, chase cows, feed them, do whatever. Throw 60, 80-pound bales of hay all day long. So I didn't need to go to the gym. But today, we have generations that didn't do anything. And those are the ones who've got the health problems. But today we have a younger generations that are really making the strides to eat properly, exercise, get mentally healthy, and support good causes that are helping to, improve the lives of our children.
Right.
Health of
Yeah, I know from my experience with the company that there's been lots of teachers that have implemented grounding in their classrooms and have had great success. So,
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. The next question was received. This is another popular question from Colette, Shelley, Stephen, Jennifer, and Lisa. All had questions about using a ground rod. Can you shed a little light about when it's good to use a ground rod, and is it better to use a ground rod than it is to use a standard outlet?
Okay. A ground rod is this. It's a 40-foot spool of cable and a 11-inch rod that you stick in the earth outside your bedroom window or wherever. Now, the reason it's 11 inches, because if it were 12 inches, you would have to call and get there's a firm that comes out and measures where the electric is, where the power is, where the gas lines are, water lines, cable, telephone, so that you don't accidentally punch a hole into something. And so there's a reason why it's an 11-inch ground rod. The second reason, or the main reason we have this is because most homes built before late 1960, 1970, they don't have grounds. They do not have there's not a ground wire in the electrical portions of the system. So they only had the two-prong outlet. Now, as time went on and people painted their houses or remodeled their houses, they would put in new outlets because they look better, but they have a ground port, but there is no ground wire connected to the port. So that's why we have, a outlet configuration checker to make sure that the wires are connected to the right terminals. So in that case, you have no option. If you want to ground yourself during sleep or when you're at a computer or anything, you have to use a ground rod. You can take a wire and connect it to a cold water pipe with a hose clamp or something, because the cold water pipe would be connected to earth also. So anyhow, that's what this is. So when is it better to use this? When you don't have a ground, you have to use it. But the issue is that the ground rod in your house, depending on what part of the country, it's anywhere from 8 to 16 feet in the ground. That is not going anywhere. I mean, it is a hard, real ground. I mean, it is a perfect ground. The problem you have with this ground rod is when the gardener comes or somebody comes and mows the lawn, they pull it out of the ground, set it up on the windowsill. Sometimes it'll sit there for months. And then you go by and say, oh my God, my ground rod's not plugged in. Okay, so this is a temporary thing. So if you can have an electrician come to your home and put a ground rod outside the window and drill a hole through and put a protected wire coming in so that you have a permanent ground rod coming into an outlet. If they do that, they need to put an orange outlet cover on it so that the electrical world knows that that is a grounded outlet versus the other outlets not being grounded. So anyhow, so to me, you're going to have a perfect ground if you connect to a home ground, because it is perfectly, I mean, it's designed for a perfect ground. There's other reasons why you want to use that ground. You only want one ground in the house if possible. But anyhow, what I think this person may be referring to is some people's nervous systems are so sensitive. Their adrenals are, their parasympathetic is so exhausted that their sympathetic can sense the noise in the environment. We talked about this last time. I don't know if I should mention it again or not. But when your parasympathetic is exhausted, then the sympathetic can push over, and you feel everything you feel static electricity, you feel the wind, you feel noise. Everything is you're more sensitive to anything and everything. Mm-hmm. The problem is most people have no issue whatsoever sleeping on the electrical ground. It's because they have a parasympathetic system, and it always dampens and quiets the noise, and there's no harm. It's like, I can give you a good example. Like one time I went to the convention in Chicago at the Palmer House, and I went to my room, opened the window, and here's the L train. That's the elevated transit train, and it's going by every 5 minutes. And it's like you're trying to sleep next to a moving train. The first night, I guarantee you, there is no way on earth you're going to sleep. The second night, about 4 in the morning, you're going to end up from exhaustion going to sleep. But something interesting happens on the third night. You notice it, but you're able to go to sleep. Then on the fourth night, this is a 7-day convention. But the fourth night, you don't hear the train at all, no matter what, and so on. So what happens is your body and your nervous system always acclimates to your environment. So it's like people were living in Colorado. We always lived as far from the freeways as possible. Then all of a sudden they started building homes along the freeway, and all of us that lived there said, who in the world is going to live in a house next to the freeway? Well, the Californians, they come, they don't have any problem with it. They do not hear the freeway. So, but the freeway is noise. So you have noise, you have so much noise in our environments. So the problem is, that's why some people want to sleep on a ground rod, because there may be a little more noise than on the electrical ground than on this ground. But generally not true, because any noise on any kind of a ground is in the environment. It's like people talk about, electric fields. Well, those electric fields are there no matter what. Whether and when you ground, you're protected against it. When you ground with an electrical ground or a ground rod, you're still protected against them. But everything in the body's dynamic, and there's a lot more to it. But the main thing is, if you feel better sleeping on a ground rod, that's fine. Just know that this is a temporary ground rod, and you need to call an electrician at some point and have them come in, or have your husband or somebody put in a permanent ground rod, drill a hole, put in a permanent plate so that the ground rod can't accidentally become disconnected, and so on.
Okay.
I hope I answered it. If not, ask again.
No, you definitely answered it. Okay, so then this will be the last pre-submitted question that we take, and then we'll go back over to the live question and answers. Okay. So is there any historical evidence that past cultures have recognized the benefits of earthing while not necessarily calling it that?
Well, in the early days, it's kind of like people didn't know, before science, before all of these modern things, people didn't need to know that there was oxygen in the air. Humans didn't need to know any of these things because it was there, it was natural, and you breathe, and oxygen did its magic. The same with grounding. In the early days, people were barefoot and slept in the caves or in the dirt or wherever, sleep on a pile of rocks, and they didn't know they needed to be grounded because they were always grounded. So the thing, there's back during the beginning of the 20th century, I don't remember the names, but like in France, Germany, and other places, you had these back to nature movements. And this is at the beginning of the industrial age. And people started going to work in factories, and people were getting more sick. And a lot of the naturopaths were promoting taking your shoes off and getting grounded before before you go to work or after you go to work and things like this. But they were aware. They didn't know the science of grounding, but they were aware that you needed to get that stress and tension and inflammation out of your body. It wasn't called inflammation then, but they knew this. And there's many books. But anyhow, as time, when I started working with grounding, I didn't know. I looked on the internet, I looked here and there. I really couldn't find much. But after we wrote the book Earthing, then there were just lots of stuff came out of the woodwork from all over. But one of the more interesting things is a lot of tribes, a lot of Native Americans, and even into Europe and Africa and so on. There are many recorded incidences where, and I have seen it myself, where if someone is sick, they'll dig a pit, and the pit will be not real deep, but it'll be, and throw a little bit of straw or whatever. And oftentimes they will actually bury the person except for their head, and just leave them buried until they recover. And I saw it myself with a I don't know, maybe a 7-8-year-old Native American child that had, I believe it was scarlet fever. The doctors didn't give her much hope, but they took her home, buried her in the earth, and then a few days later she was up running around. But so anyhow, many people knew that the earth was healing, but they didn't know why. but intuitively, it's like the animals. Intuitively, we humans, we learn so much from the animals. We watch the animals. If an animal gets sick, they go and paw the ground a little bit and put their belly against the ground and stay there until they heal up. So yes, it's intuitively, it's all over the place. The animals do it. And humans, when the industrial age came along and electricity came along and all of these modern creature comforts, and we invented plastics and all these things, and we invented television and electric lights, we were like a moth. We became enamored with the lights, and we forgot everything that brought us here, got us here. Now it's time to say, oh, wait a minute, our bodies are on fire, our health is compromised. We need to stop and fix this. So there's a 20, 40-year window ahead of us where we're going to have to reground our floors, redo everything so that it's conductive, because the Earth's electric field, the Earth's negative surface charge, Earth's energy is what maintains our immune system electrically stable. We are part of the Earth. We have to have this electric connection, just like we have to ground our electrical systems for electrical stability and safety.
Perfect. You know what? You actually just led us right into our next live question.
Cool.
If I was building or renovating a home, what would you recommend in planning and designing a grounded living space?
Well, the first thing I would do, which I have done, is when they pour the concrete, you just polish it, stain it, polish it, put a water-based sealer on it. It's just like being outdoors in the yard. If you don't like concrete, then the next best thing is stone, any kind of earthen material, stone. But you have to make sure you don't put the stone down with plastic grout, because that'll insulate it from the concrete. So then you have to use standard cement grout. So stone is pretty good conductive. If you can't do any of those things, then they do have grounded carpets. They're primarily used for clean rooms, mission critical centers, any place, like air traffic control, 911, they all have to have grounded carpets. So there's no static electricity that can spark and arc and damage a computer or something. So, but you can get grounded carpets. They're not the prettiest things in the world, but they're coming along. They're better. A lot of your high-end office buildings have them in the elevators and so on. But anyhow, they're available. So I have used those. We put them in schools. We put them in wellness centers, and I have them in one of my places where I spend time. So that's the first thing I would do, is have a grounded floor so that I can go barefoot, or at least wear socks. If I were to, one of the first homes I ever built was in Montana. I went to Santa Fe, spent about a week there on vacation, went home, and I said, I want one of those adobe homes. So I built an adobe home. It was all mud walls. It was very authentic. I absolutely loved that home because it was cool. It was like living in a cave, and it was just earthy. I didn't realize at the time that it was earth. It's ground surround. It was totally earth. But brick homes are, but anyhow, so if you're going to use just a regular standard modern home with wallboard and 2x4, basically a lot of the wallboard has aluminum shielding on one side, grounded as they put it up so that it's a shield. You can have the wiring done in metal clad so that the electric fields are eliminated in the home. They do this in all commercial buildings, have metal clad. This is a little metal tube that the wiring is in, and it's grounded to the earth, and that prevents electric fields from radiating into the environment. So you have a quieter environment. But it's simple things like that. I could go on and on and on, but the main thing is your floors. What you walk on, sit on, or sleep on, those all need to be connected to the earth one way or another.
Okay, perfect. Our next question from Kathy is, how long will the effect, or how long will the grounding affect your blood once you are no longer grounded?
Okay. To give you an idea, we'll go back to this.
And then also, Clint, can you put it a little bit closer to the screen?
Okay, I will. Okay, so this study here was really interesting. My blood's not on this picture because, but anyhow, these were like 13 medical docs and scientists. Okay, and over here was afterwards. Well, when they tested my blood was already over here. So I had been grounded for 4 or 5 years and grounded most of the, I'm grounded at least 12, 16 hours a day, if not longer. And I'm barefoot all the time, unless I go into public, then I be respectful. But what I found is these docs, if you measured their blood 30 minutes after grounding, it looked like this. If you measured their blood an hour or two after grounding, then the rouleau formations would start to return. And the reason was because they had so much inflammation in the body, the electrons that they absorbed are being used up. So anyhow, the longer you ground, it's cumulative. Because first of all, it's reducing the inflammation in your body. And then the electrons, the blood doesn't have to give up its electrons to help put out the fire. But the more you're grounded, the more you reduce inflammation, the longer you can go ungrounded. So it's dynamic, meaning depending on your health and depending on the amount of time you have grounded, depending on the amount of stress that you have in your life. But generally speaking, I can go for at least a day, maybe.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Clint. The next question is, if I'm going to use my half grounding sheet horizontally, why do you say to put it by the feet/legs versus under the torso?
Okay, we had back in how that product came into being. There's 2 reasons. One was it was a sample that a fabric supplier brought to us, laid it across of a bed we had in the office and said, here, and just to test the cotton. And everybody looked at it and said, well, that's all we need. Just put it there and put our feet on it. And at the time, it made all the sense to me in the world, because what I was trying to get people to understand is put your feet on the earth. And so what we're doing here at night is putting your feet on the earth so you can be grounded during sleep. Now it works. But the problem is in the morning, it was always pushed over the end of the bed and your feet weren't on it. The second reason that product came into existence was marketed was had a doc over in Laguna Beach, called up one day. He had been buying quite a few of them for patients. He called up one day. He says, is there any way you can make a half sheet? And I said, why in the world would you want a half sheet? All we have is problems with them. And he says, well, it's the spouse problem. He says, if the woman brings something home, puts it in the bed, the man says, this is crazy, get it out of here. Keep it on your side of the bed. I don't want anything to do with it. If the man brings something home, the woman says, keep that thing on your own side of the bed. Keep it away from me. I don't want to know anything about it. Keep it, so on. So people, anytime somebody brings something home that's new and different, they have these spousal issues. So with a half sheet, they can just put it on their side of the bed. So that's how it all came into being. And that's why we have half sheets today, is because of the spouse problem. And it's more serious than I realized. I had no idea, but it is a big issue. But that's how it came into being. So that's why we had to go sideways, horizontal. It was ABC, connect the dots. If you're barefoot on the earth, you feel better. Go to bed, put your feet on the earth on the bed pad, you'll feel better. So that's how it came about.
Okay, perfect. And then I also think that maybe they were asking about if it's more effective at the bottom. And I think you've already answered that previously in this webinar, just, if you have it at your feet.
Let me just take a second on that. It is, as far as maybe absorbing electrons. But what we've learned is if you're laying on it vertically, so your whole body's on it, it's the electric field. It's the resonating electrical energy of the earth. You are close coupled with it. And so your whole body, the bigger the ground plane, the more surface area contact, then the more power in the close coupling.
Okay, perfect.
Calming.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question from Meg. She said that she's a teacher and she was asking how teachers have grounded their students. She said, I feel I wouldn't get permission from parents who would think it was weird or dangerous. Do you have anything to say about that?
That's the biggest issue. I mean, when we put in carpet, it's simple. It's just grounded carpet. And there was no issues. When you can't do anything in a school without getting parents' permission. If it's, treatment oriented or whatever. Grounding is not necessarily a treatment. The reason we did it there and got away with it because a lot of these kids, we were grounding the teachers because the teachers had health issues. There was a program called Inspire for teachers, and it was to help them to get their health back. And by grounding them, they could get the information out of their body. And so many of them got, experienced such great results with it. And then a couple of them noticed that the children who, the special needs children, and especially some of the autistic kids, during recess, the first thing they would do is they would run out of the building and they would run to where the bushes were or the grass was in the back of the school, and they would hide in the bushes. And so they always had to go get them and bring them in. And then somebody said, well, maybe it's because they're grounded there. And so we started bringing grounded bean bags in to the calming room, what they called the calming room. And the carpet was grounded, so the bean bag didn't need a wire, and it was conductive. So we just laid the bean bag on the carpet and it was automatically grounded. And then we started bringing in grounded yoga mats and so on. And what was interesting was we didn't do anything specific other than put them in the environment. And then the children would migrate to them. Like during class, we had one classroom that just had grounded yoga mat in the corner. Somehow, one of the kids found it. And every time he would start to melt down, he would wander back, lay down on the grounded yoga mat. And then 15, 20 minutes later, he'd get up and come back to his desk. So that was not, not done with permission. But anyhow, we have all the safety in the world built into this, so there's no issue whatsoever. But that's the big problem. It's really a challenge. Somebody has to be. All we did, and it was only my job to go out and show everybody that this needs to be done. It's not my mission to go out and ground schools. I'm just trying to say, here's the information, here's the results, and so on. But somebody does need to make a business out of getting these carpets out of these schools. They shouldn't be there in the first place. Concrete those, polish the floors, put them back on earth. Get rid of all of this craziness. But again, these are the things I've learned. I'm just willing to share them, and I will do anything to support anybody that wants to do it based on the knowledge we have and the information we have. But
right,
you're correct. It's hard to do it in school.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect place to leave off for today. So unless there's anything else you want to add today, Clint?
No, except I guess in 2 weeks, we're going to have Gaetan, who is an expert in physics and electrical and bioelectrical. And he can address a lot of the questions like on acupuncture and the meridians and all of those kind of things. We've actually done studies on some of these, and he can discuss them. And then a lot of people we're forever plagued with all of the craziness around electric EMF, magnetic fields, and cell phones, and all of these things. So anyhow, he's the expert. I'm going to let him continue to be the expert, and he's going to be on the show next time. And so all of the questions that anybody has, now's your chance.
Yeah, so just like Clint said, remember to save all of those electromagnetic frequency related questions for our designated webinar. And if you have any other burning or urgent questions that you want to get answered before that next webinar, please feel free to email our help desk at help@earthing.com, and our customer service team will be happy to help, or we'll add it to our next webinar. So thank you all so much for joining us today, and we really appreciate you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste. Enjoy.